In the book of Zechariah, there's what some interpret as a really detailed prophetic blueprint. It's this dramatic, step-by-step timeline of events that, according to this view, leads to a whole new world order centered on Jerusalem. Today, we're going to walk through that exact sequence, piece by piece, to understand how this ancient text is seen as a map to the future. So let's dive right in.
So what exactly is this prophetic blueprint? How does a conflict that starts in Jerusalem supposedly escalate into a total global transformation? We're going to break down the specific 9-step sequence that's laid out in chapters 12 through 14 of Zechariah. It's going to show us how this whole narrative unfolds from an international crisis all the way to a divine intervention.
Okay, here it is. This is our roadmap for this explainer. This 9-step sequence is really the core of the whole thing. And as you can see, it starts with some serious conflict, then it pivots on this incredible intervention, and it wraps up with a completely new global order. We're going to explore all of this in 3 distinct parts. All right, let's get into it with part 1, the Siege of Jerusalem. This is the flashpoint. It's where the entire sequence kicks off with a major international crisis that puts the whole world on edge.
So the timeline begins with this immense global tension. Zechariah 12:3 actually says, "I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples." Now, the interpretation here isn't that this is some small regional skirmish. No, this is described as a worldwide coalition of nations all gathering against the city. It really sets the stage for a conflict on a truly global scale.
And this conflict, it's not just a threat, it absolutely escalates. The prophecy says the city will actually be captured and half its people will be forced into exile. But this detail is so crucial. It's a partial defeat, not a total annihilation. This creates this moment of just genuine crisis and desperation, which, in turn, sets the stage for a pretty dramatic rescue. And that rescue? Well, that brings us right into part 2, the divine intervention. Just when everything looks its absolute darkest, the entire dynamic of the conflict shifts in this incredibly powerful and unexpected way. This is the turning point, the pivot for the entire story. So what do we actually mean by divine intervention here? Well, it's not subtle. The text in Zechariah 14 is pretty clear. It says, "Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations." This is described as direct, actual military involvement, where the supernatural literally steps into the physical conflict to defend the city. Now, right in the middle of this battle, the focus does something amazing. It shifts from the external war to an internal revelation. The text from Zechariah 12:10 describes this profound moment. "They will look on me whom they pierced." According to this interpretation, this recognition of a pierced Messiah is what triggers a massive spiritual awakening across the entire nation. And this recognition isn't just, a mental checklist. It sparks a deep, genuine, nationwide repentance. The prophecy talks about a fountain being opened for cleansing from sin. This is portrayed as the direct emotional and spiritual fallout from finally identifying the one who was pierced. So, with the conflict now resolved and the nation spiritually renewed, the sequence moves into its final, world-altering phase. This is part 3, the King and his kingdom, where a totally new global order is established. This final act unfolds in 4 really climactic steps. First, there's a physical appearance. The text says his feet will literally stand on the Mount of Olives. Second, this is accompanied by cosmic disturbances that actually change the landscape itself. Third, the result of all this is a new global government where, as Zechariah 14:9 puts it, the Lord will be king over all the earth. And finally, this new reality is cemented by all nations coming to Jerusalem every single year to worship. So if we just take a step back and look at the whole thing, you can see this really clear narrative arc. It pretty much follows a classic 3-act structure, doesn't it? You've got a deep crisis, then a dramatic turning point that's driven by divine intervention, and finally, the establishment of this new global kingdom. It's a complete story, moving from total conflict to a final resolution. And that is the sequence as it's laid out in the book of Zechariah. It kind of leaves us with this one big, thought-provoking question. For people who hold these beliefs, how do prophetic frameworks, just like this one, influence how they see and interpret the world events that are happening today? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.